Hello and welcome into the Addison the 35th podcast. I am Ryan Herrera, your host for this Cubs episode, coming to you, recording Thursday, July 10th, but you'll be listening to this on Friday, July 11th, as the Cubs kick off the last weekend series before the All-Star break against the Yankees on the road. Um, the Cubs are coming off a win in Minnesota, avoiding a sweep, 8-1 win on Thursday. So that was coming off a three-game sweep of Cleveland at home and winning two of three from the Cardinals at home, that last homestand. So good homestand, not the best start against the Twins to start the last road trip before the All-Star break. They dropped the first two against the Twins, didn't look great, and things, especially that Tuesday loss, things fell apart on I think it was Hodge, yeah, Porter Hodge. So things kind of fell apart on them there, but they managed to avoid the sweep and they exit Thursday with a 55 and 38 record heading into that series in the Bronx. The problem is they're only 2 games ahead of Milwaukee, who for some reason they're doing their Brewers magic again, and the Brewers just won't stop winning. They're winning series, going on winning streaks. The Cardinals, who were in it for a while and still technically are, but they've fallen back to 5.5 games back after Thursday. But the Brewers are still there, and those two teams specifically have not made it easy on the Cubs, who have for the last 3 months, I believe, and a little bit longer, have held at least a share, if not sole possession, of first place. Those two teams haven't gone away. The Cubs, their largest division lead so far this season was only 6.5 games on June 17th. So it's not been a super big lead in the division like maybe you'll see with some other teams, and maybe that extends if the Cubs can get hot after the break, or just at least obviously this Yankees series matters too, but a lot of baseball left to play, so maybe they can extend that and get a more comfortable lead. But even 6.5 games midway through the season isn't that comfortable. So part of it is they haven't gone on super long winning streaks. They do only have 2 3-game losing streaks, so they've done a really good job of minimizing that and turning the page and letting letting what happened to them the last 2 years and especially last year in May and June sink their season. So they haven't gone on very long losing streaks, barely any 3-game losing streaks. But their longest win streak is also only 5 games. Um, they do have three other 4-game win streaks and a bunch of threes, but just that one 5-game winning streak. And if you can keep stacking up 3 4 games, like that's fine, and you're gonna have a good record, which you can see by the Cubs 55 and 38 record. But when some of the other teams in your division are going on longer winning streaks and gaining ground on you in that sense, and the Brewers have been doing that a lot lately, the last few weeks actually. Now you see where you're at. So like even with Milwaukee making a run, and it's so funny because like especially after the first two losses against the Twins, Cubs Twitter. That's part of being on Cubs Twitter is the overreaction to single games and stuff. But like it felt like doom and gloom because the Brewers had swept the Dodgers and the Cubs lost the first 2 games against the Twins, and so the Brewers were just continuing to claw their way back and beating a really good team there. But like even with Milwaukee making a run, the Cubs are still only a half game back of the Dodgers for the best record in the National League, and only 3.5 games back of Detroit for the top record in Major League Baseball. So the Cubs are having a great season. It's just that the Brewers are also right there having a really good season themselves. So, um, I think you got to put it into perspective that the ebbs and flows of the season happen. The Brewers are a well-run organization. They have a lot of really good players, maybe not superstar names household names, but they do have a bunch of really good players over there. Jackson Chourio is one of them. Christian Yelich is their household name, but he's maybe not even been their best player. They've got guys all over the field that are playing really well, and their pitching staff is doing a really good job. Freddie Peralta, Jacob Mizorowski, getting Brandon Woodruff back is huge for him. So the Brewers keep doing Brewers things, which has helped them win the division the last, I think 6 of the last seasons or 6 of the last 7 seasons, something like that. They keep doing Brewers things and they're hanging in there and making it really tough on the Cubs. And I get why Cubs fans get a little nervous about that and a little frantic, especially when The Brewers are beating the Dodgers and the Cubs are losing to the Twins. But I think you do have to put it into perspective that the Cubs are having a really, really great season, and they're only what 93 games into the season. Like there's a ton of baseball left to play, and you never know what's going to happen in the second half. Like obviously, the Cubs fans, the players, all that do not want the division to flip and then them have to chase the Brewers, of course, right? Like that's number one. But you also don't know if the Brewers are going to slow down and not be. I think they have. I don't know the amount of days it's been, but like over a pretty solid stretch of baseball, they have one of, if not the best record in baseball in that time. So the Brewers are doing a lot of really good things, but the Cubs are still staying at that point where they are in first place, and they have been in first place for a while. So at this point, the Cubs control their destiny, and that's hard to say when there's still so many games left to play. Like losses are going to happen, but the Cubs do still own or do still control their destiny as the first place team in the division, and it's going to be on them to go out and hold off the Brewers. And when they play the Brewers, I don't remember how many games they have left against them, but when they do play them, going out and winning those series, maybe sweeping a series, whatever it is, it's up to them to do that. But the Brewers aren't making it easy on them. And on the flip side, the Cubs are also still having a really, really good season. I think both can be true, and you can also you can be nervous about what the Brewers are doing while also realizing the Cubs division race, wild card, whatever it is, like they have put themselves in a great position to make a playoff run in the second half. And that's what they needed to do. That's what we've talked about going into the season was them needing to put themselves in a good position to make the playoffs. And that's what they've done. So set the stage, I guess, for this last weekend with now that they have that win in Minnesota, still 2 games ahead of Milwaukee. If I'm doing my math right, they just need to win one in New York to make sure they at least have a tie of first place heading into the All Star break. Like, of course, you want to win that series, maybe even sweep them. Like that would be very good for the Cubs. But as long as you win one game, because I think that the Brewers have the Nationals at home to end the first half. As long as you win one game, you will at least have a share of first place heading into the All Star break. It's not going to be easy, right? The Yankees are a really good team, and again, we'll talk about them in a second. But you win one game there, you at least guarantee yourself a share of first place heading into the All Star break, and that's what the Cubs need to do. They can't expect the Nationals to go and win a series. Like they can't rely on the Nationals to go and win a series in Milwaukee. Is what I'm trying to say. So the Cubs do have to take care of business at least one game and then get to the break at least with a share of first place. You want to be in first place and you want to be able to extend the lead in the division going in after this last weekend. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, the Cubs have set themselves up in a really good position to make a good run and make a playoff run and at least keep the success going and keep being the team that they've been this season. Like they've set themselves up in a good position, but it's on them to kind of just keep carrying that once they finish this weekend, go through the All Star break, and then come out of the gates against Boston next week and hit the ground running and keep that success, that overall success, right? Like there's been some lulls, and that's the ebbs and flows of the season. But the overall success, it's going to be on them to carry that in the second half. But so we'll see what happens with all that, and how they do and how the Brewers do if they fall back or stay hot. We'll keep an eye on that, of course. But when I say the Cubs have put themselves in a position to uh, to 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 make a good run in the half, it's due to a lot of the second half. Make a good run in the second half. There you go. It's due to a lot of players playing really well throughout the first half of the season. And to start, of course, you have Pete Armstrong and Kyle Tucker being voted in as All-Star starters. I want to say this is Kyle Tucker's fourth All-Star game and first time starting, and this is PCA's first All-Star game overall, of course. I don't need to. I don't think I need to talk about PCA and Kyle Tucker all that much because I talk about those two enough as it is because those are the Cubs leaders right now. They have again a lot of players playing really well, but PCA is their all-star defensive, like elite defensive center fielder. Their energy guy, the guy that shows the passion on the field. He causes havoc on the bases, and all of a sudden he's hitting 25 home runs. Right, like he hit 2 today in Minnesota. He's leading the league, or not leading the league, but he has 25 home runs, which is, I want to say, like tied for fourth in the NL or something crazy like that. So he's hitting a ton of home runs. Kyle Tucker is looking like that MVP candidate that you thought you were trading for if you're Jed Hoyer. Like those, and it's funny the contrast between the two because PCA is so energetic, and you see the frustration on when he strikes out in a big moment, like when he slams the bat down or the helmet down, like you see that come out. But he is a guy that feeds off the energy and it shows the passion, and like kind of wears that on his sleeve. Whereas Kyle Tucker seems more reserved, seems like things don't necessarily get to him. Like he just kind of puts his head down and goes on to the next player, goes on to the next pitch, it's contrasting in a way, but it fits in well. And you can lead teams in different ways, and both those two guys are doing it, and doing it at a high level. And so there's a good reason why those two guys were voted in as all-star starters. And frankly, they deserve it because they've been those two guys for the Cubs so far this season. But the one guy I do want to talk about, and maybe surprise of the season for definitely the surprise of the season for the Cubs, I'd say, is Matthew Boyd. Matthew Boyd has been, so when you look at the Cubs rotation, you have Justin Steele going down pretty early in the season. For the season, and you're not going to get him back for the rest of the year, right? He's been gone for a couple months now, 3 months now, and you're not getting him back. Shota Imanaga missed basically 2 months. Jameson Tyone is on the IL now, and he's had his really good moments and more. I would say he's more consistently been good, not necessarily great, but more consistently been good than not. But now he's on the IL. Javier Assad still hasn't pitched yet this year. Colin Ray had a really good run there, and he actually pitched really well today. But he's also had more recently times where he just hasn't pitched at that same level. Ben Brown is no longer on the major league roster right now. Like he had a lot of struggles. He had a lot of flashes where you saw what the Cubs see in him, but he also had a lot of struggles at the major league level. And so he's down in Iowa right now. And Cade Horton has been he's honestly been solid enough, being a major leaguer for the first time, but just not necessarily. He's not been, his numbers don't jump off the page. He's had some rookie pitcher struggles and stuff like that. He's also had a bunch of really good moments too, and so there's a reason he's still up. He's not the one that got sent down or whenever guys were getting healthy when Shota came back, right? So he's earned his way on to stay up in the rotation and keep pitching right now. But his numbers don't necessarily jump off the page. The guys who do, who are the guys whose numbers do, is Matthew Boyd. And just going to run through some of these. And most of these are entering Thursday. So entering Thursday, only 8 starters had more quality starts than Boyd's 12. And this is across Major League Baseball. Only 14 starters had more 6+ innings starts than Boyd's 12. Only 3 starters allowed 3 or less earned runs in a start more times than Boyd, who has 17 of those. Uh, only only 7 had only 7 starters gave up 2 or fewer earned runs in a start more than Boyd's 14, and only 13 starters had more scoreless starts than Boyd's 5. So like he's up there across Major League Baseball with pitching a lot of innings, giving the team a lot of length, allowing 3 or fewer runs, right? Like you're talking about quality starts, at least 6 innings with no more than 3 earned runs allowed. Like this guy's going out and limiting runs, like keeping teams off the scoreboard and pitching the Cubs deeper into games consistently. And he's done that all year. So he does still have one more start on Saturday. But as of the end of Thursday, he's 9th in Major League Baseball and 3rd in the National League in ERA with a 2.52. He's tied for 16th in Major League Baseball, tied for 9th in the National League in pitcher WAR, according to Fangraphs 2.4. He's tied for 5th in Major League Baseball and tied for 2nd in the National League in wins. And he has pitched 103 and 2/3 innings this year, which if you think about his last few seasons, he had the COVID season in 2020, then injuries, Tommy John surgery, late comeback last year. due to all that, he hasn't pitched more than 78 and two-thirds innings in a single season since 2019. Like that's kind of crazy, and that's not like he's well above that. He's well above that, and I think coming into the season, the fact that he had so much time off, he had a really good run with Cleveland to end the year. I think it was eight good starts. Don't remember what the ERA was, but eight pretty good starts, and then started actually three playoff games for him as they ran to the ALCS. So despite that, with just all the time off and then the seasons of not throwing a ton of innings, not having that high of a workload, I would say the more his workload increases, the more concerning it can become. I did get the chance to talk to him last week at Wrigley. Said he's feeling really good. Had like praised the training staff and the strength and conditioning coaches and stuff for keeping him, feeling good, feeling ready to pitch when it's his turn to take the ball. So he feels like he's in a good spot, and he's quickly putting together starts with 6 innings, a couple with 7 there, and while the innings climb, the Cubs are going to continue to have to monitor that, of course, but the more he still feels good, even as the innings climb, the better you feel about him being able to make it through a major league season. He's done it before. He's 34 years old. Like he's done it before, honestly pre-COVID, and so he knows what it kind of takes to get the body through all that. Obviously, Tommy John surgery kind of throws things, just throws them for a loop, throws everything for a loop when you're spending all that, when you major surgery like that, and then you're spending so much time on the sidelines, like that could throw you for a loop. But Matthew Boyd is a veteran pitcher. He's been in this league for a long time. He debuted over 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago now, but he's about a decade in the league right now. This is 11th season, and for the first time, he can call himself an all-star. And I think that's a very he's such a nice guy. He being asked about all-stars and stuff, and even just how he's been pitching this year, the theme for him was just being grateful and grateful for his teammates, for the coaches, for the training staff. Like, give so much credit to all of them for, like, I think his quote was like, "I'm a product of the people around me," and that's super cool to hear from a guy who I think I would think that going through all the injury stuff and just trying to find his way back, and then kind of signing up a prove it deal in a way with Cleveland last summer, while he was still finishing his rehab. I think all those trials and tribulations probably give him a pretty good, or a different perspective on being a major league baseball player and living that life of a major league baseball player on and off the field. So it's always nice to talk to him. I remember talking to him when he first signed, or when the Cubs first introduced him, like in my hotel room at the winter meetings in Dallas last winter, and just immediately, even on Zoom, immediately you could tell, like, the nice guy part of it, the nice guy aspect of it, but he's also really confident in himself. And when I did get the chance to talk to him, I kind of asked him what's been key about getting to, or pitching the way he's pitched this year, and basically since the beginning of the year. And he kind of said it was just picking up where I left off. Like, he knows who he is, and he knows what he needs. He knows who he is, and he knows what he needs to do when the ball's in his hand, and that comes through all the experience he has at this level, going through the challenges of the injuries and stuff like that, finding that success even in a limited sample towards the end of last season, and just knowing who he is and what he wants to be on the mound. And so it's being an all-star for him. It's a great honor. It's a hell of a comeback story. Again, for a 34-year-old, 11th season, debuted on June 27th, 2015. Like, and when I'll go back to what I said earlier of, he's got to be the biggest surprise on this cup. Maybe Pete Crow Armstrong, honestly, like has the argument, but um, like Matthew Boyd is right up there as far as surprises. That 2 year, was a $29 million contract for a guy, again, who had a limited sample coming off Tommy John surgery. And I didn't like, I remember talking about it at the time and just saying, like, I think it's a I think it's a move that raises your floor, but not necessarily your ceiling. I think it's a guy like a guy you take a risk on if you feel comfortable with it, but I don't know, and especially the money that he gave, right? Like 14.5 million AAV or whatever that is. Um, I didn't look at it as a big swing for a free agent pitcher. I looked at it as this guy can come in, maybe be your number four starter behind Steele, Shota, and Tyone, and raise the floor of your team and hopefully give you a bunch of good innings and maybe not 200 or even 180, but can give you a bunch of good innings over the year. And I'll say I was wrong. Like Matthew Boyd has been the starter that's raised the team's ceiling and the floor. I mean, he's raised their floor for sure, but he's also raised their ceiling just with the way he's pitched. Like he's pitched like an all-star, right? He is an all-star. He's pitched like an all-star. He was super deserving of it, I would say. And it is a great comeback story for a guy to go through all that for a few years and come back and have this kind of season, a career season, and be named an all-star for the first time at 34 years old in his 11th season, 10 years after his debut. I think that's a great story. And I mean the Cubs deserve credit for identifying him and feeling like they could keep him on that track that he kind of showed at the end of last season. They deserve credit for the find, but obviously Matthew Boyd deserves a ton of credit for pitching the way he's pitched, being being the Cubs' top starter when I don't think anyone expected him to be their top starter this year, and pitching his way to the All Star game. It's a great honor again, and again a hell of a comeback story for that guy. And so kudos to him for doing that. And again, he joins PCA and Kyle Tucker on the National League All Star team. So the Cubs have three All Stars. It's Matthew Boyd, Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker. Now we can talk about it. Were there snubs? Were there snubs on this team? And like I don't love getting too much into the All Star snubs because obviously there's the voting, the fan voting rules for starters, and so the favorite players are going to get voted in. The household names are going to be the ones that get voted in, regardless of the seasons that they're having. Sometimes, so the fan voting obviously uh, sways things in ways. The player voting, the commissioner picks, like all that kind of stuff. Major League Baseball's picks. The voting or the selection process is weird, and so I can't. And on top of the rule that every team has to have a representative, like that's also part of the calculus here. So it's hard to get into snub, or it's hard to at least be too mad about snubs, um, at least in my opinion. If you're a fan, like it's hard. I don't think it's worth talking about snubs too much, just because of how complicated the process is, unless someone like absolutely had way too good of a season to be left off an all-star team. I don't know that the Cubs necessarily had that. I mean, they have their three all-stars right now, and I don't know that they've necessarily had. Let me walk this back a little bit and just kind of get into it. If you're looking at potential all-star Cubs snubs, I think there's two guys that stand out in my mind. Like there's a few guys that had their cases. Nico Horner had a case there, a little bit above average with like WRC plus. I think he has 103, but still playing tremendous defense over at second base. Probably going to be in the Gold Glove conversation here again this year. So he had a case, didn't get it. Okay, Carson Kelly gave himself. I think he was if I'm not mistaken, a finalist in the All Star voting. He obviously didn't win it, and a lot of it probably had to do with just the insane run he was on to begin the year. He hasn't kept that up quite as high as it was, but an insane run for him for the first few weeks of the season. And so he had a case. I think the fact that Hunter Goodman of the Rockies kind of like he was their lone representative, I think that probably played a part in why he was picked over Carson Kelly. But Carson Kelly had a case, but not one where I'm like, oh, he definitely should have been in there. I think it's fine where it's at. Another guy, maybe Daniel Palencia. He has been he blew his first save opportunity, I believe, and he's 10 for 10 since. with a 1.65 ERA and a 0.92 WHIP. Like, he's been awesome for the Cubs since he moved into that closer role, and with the triple digit fastball, the slider, like, he has been awesome for him and doing a really good job in that, and it's showing some really in some high leverage, highest of leverage moments, doing a really good job. And that's what closing is, right? Safe situations. Probably hasn't been doing it long enough, right? He didn't start out the season as a Cubs closer. Wasn't even in the bullpen, I don't think, to start out the season. So probably hasn't been just doing it long enough to earn that All Star nod. But props to him for even kind of making it a conversation with the way he's pitched since he took over that closer role. The two guys I think have the biggest cases to at least be snubs. Number one, Seiya Suzuki has had an outstanding offensive season to start the year. 25 home runs, at the end of Thursday, 25 home runs, so tied for fourth in the National League with PCA. A 140 WRC plus, which is ninth in the National League. 77 RBIs lead the National League, and he's got an 873 OPS, which is also ninth. So there's that RBI leader, not being on the All Star team. Then tied for fourth with 25 home runs in the NL. Like, just he's had a great offensive season, and maybe if he's playing outfield and at least doing well or good enough defensively, like, maybe that helps his case to be on the All Star team as an outfielder. But I mean, you're looking at the two guys that got well, you're looking at the other two DHs on the National League All Star team. No one was going to get voted in over Shohei Ohtani at DH. Like, that's just wasn't going to happen. And Kyle Schwarber himself is having an outstanding season. So I understand, like, saying Seiya got snubbed. I get it because he's having a great season, but I can't say for sure. Like, I mean, he wasn't going to get voted in over Otani, who's having a fantastic season, and it was going to be hard for him to beat out Kyle Schwarber for that spot in there. So maybe he gets just kind of maybe he just kind of gets screwed for being up against those two guys when those two guys are having their own really good seasons. So uh Seiya, maybe one day he gets there, but nonetheless he had a great has had and he's got three more games, but has had a fantastic offensive season to or at least for the first half, and we'll see if he can keep that going after the All-Star break. The other guy that has a case to at least be a snub is Michael Bush. Run down some of his numbers, which are insane. A 162 WRC plus, second in the National League. If you care about batting average, 296 batting average, which is third in the National League. I got to make sure that's correct because Michael Bush, I had no idea that he had a 296 batting average. Give me a second. I need to look that one up because that's super high. I know he's been having a really good offensive season, but 296 is higher. Yep, 296 right there. I even wrote it down and couldn't believe that number. But that's third in the National League, 296 average. And then he's got a 934 OPS, which is also third in the National League. His 18 home runs are tied for 10th, 58 RBIs are tied for 11th. Another guy where it's like he wasn't going to get voted in over Freddie Freeman. Pete Alonso and Matt Olson were the other two guys that got voted in ahead of Michael Bush, or not voted in, but selected as technically infielders, but the first baseman that got picked in over Michael Bush. Again, Freddie Freeman is having an outstanding season. He got voted in. That's all well and good. I do think that Michael Bush had a case to be in over either Pete Alonso or Matt Olson, but those guys are having pretty good seasons themselves too. I think Michael Bush has rated out. He may not have rated out the worst defensively among those guys, but I want to say Matt Olson is ahead of him in that, and you know Pete Alonso just has some better offensive numbers, but I mean not all of them, right? Like Michael Bush is up there, so I can't necessarily say that Michael Bush had to be in there over any of those guys. Um, but he has had an outstanding season himself, and I think that's when you kind of look back at what I know there's a lot of anxiety over what the Cubs did have to give up to get him, Michael Bush from the Dodgers, going into last season. But I think Michael Bush will have an all-star season in it. The way he's hit this year, and he's still relatively young. He's not necessarily young, but just not as much major league experience. And he's already put together the season that he's had. Again, 934 OPS, 296 average, 162 WRC plus. Like fantastic numbers for a guy uh that's still in his like basically second. I mean, I don't remember how much he played with the Dodgers, but it wasn't a ton. So like basically his second full season as a big leaguer. And he's putting up those kind of numbers. And so I kind of go back to he definitely had a case. And I think even more so than say a Suzuki, Michael Bush. If you had to pick one of those guys as being the number one snub on the Cubs, it'd be probably Michael Bush in my eyes. But the two guys that got selected ahead of him, that got put on the roster ahead of him, also having pretty good seasons. And I think it's okay to be upset that Michael Bush didn't get there because you can definitely put some of his numbers ahead of those two guys. I think you can also put some of those two guys' numbers ahead of Michael Bush's. And I think that if Michael Bush can continue on this trajectory coming out of, again, just his second full season in the big leagues, I do think, and the way I mean, he's definitely improved defensively from when the Cubs first got him and he first started being their everyday first baseman. He's getting more time to hit against lefties now recently. And I think I'd be willing to say that we'll see a Michael Bush all-star selection in the future. I think he's got that kind of offensive talent, continuing to improve and look pretty good over there defensively at first base. I mean, there's some big names and some big hitters that he's going up against in the National League first base conversation, but he's at least this season he's been right up there with them, and yeah, I think you'll see a Michael Bush in the All Star game before his career is over. Whether that's multiple or just one, whatever. I think Michael Bush will be able to call himself an All Star at some point in his major league career because the way he's doing it right now, second season, he's doing a really good job. So those might be your snubs. You want to call them snubs if you don't want to get into snubs that much, but those are definitely guys, especially Suzuki and Bush, that definitely had cases to be all stars. And that kind of just goes to the point I let in with that the Cubs have had a ton of guys that have just been lifting this team up and helping them win games. And it's not the same guy every night. A lot of times it's different guys on different nights leading in the victory, whether it's the pitching or the bullpen shutting things down or the PCA hitting a home run or say Suzuki hitting a home run or Kyle Tucker having a big hit or Nico Horner coming through with a runner in scoring position. It's been a lot of different guys leading this team to where they are. And that's why you can say that there was there might have been a few snubs on this Cubs team because um, I think if things were flipped and those guys did make the All Star team, I don't think people would be saying that those guys didn't deserve it because there are definitely other deserving guys on this team that could have been playing in the All Star game on Tuesday, Wednesday, what day is that? Whatever, could have been playing in the All Star game next week. So that's where we'll leave it at. Real quick, up next, 3 games again in New York against the Yankees. The Yankees are 52 and 41. They're second. Actually, we dropped out of first place in the AL West. They're second, but they are the top AL wildcard team, and they will go into the series having won 4 straight. So definitely still a dangerous team. Aaron Judge is there, and he's just having a uh, seemingly historic offensive season. I mean, this guy's. I think you got to give Aaron Judge credit as being easily one of the best hitters of the generation, but potentially, continuing to work his way into maybe one of the better hitters we've ever seen in this game. Maybe not saying he's number one, but like he just continues to churn out seasons that were like, how can you not put this guy among the best hitters in the game? So, got to give the credit to Aaron Judge there. But they overall have still a really good team. Record wise, not as good as the Cubs, but records are records at this point in the season, and the Yankees are dangerous. And it wouldn't be a complete shock if the Cubs went into New York to the Bronx and got swept by the Yankees. would not be a complete shock. So it's on them to go in there and avoid a sweep, but definitely try to win that series and maybe even sweep the Yankees themselves. You never know. That's baseball, right? So going up pitching matchups, it's Chris Flexen, who's 5-0 with a 0.83 ERA. I believe that'll be a bullpen game for the Cubs. Up against Carlos Rodon, who's 9-6 with a 3.30 ERA. That's Friday's matchup. You got All-Star Matthew Boyd, who's 9-3 with a 2.52 ERA, up against Max Fried who's 11-2 with a 2.27 ERA. That's Saturday's matchup. And then on Sunday, to close out the first half, Shota Imanaga, 5-3, 2.80 ERA versus Will Warren, 6-4, 4.70 ERA. So some big names in there, especially on the Yankees side when you're talking about Max Fried, right? As a guy that I remember, I think going into the offseason last year, we were kind of like, that's a guy that should be on the Cubs' radar. Ultimately, pretty quickly wasn't, and he's going out and having a fantastic season for the Yankees there. So it's going to be interesting to see how these pitchers go, how this bullpen game goes on Friday, how Matthew Boyd finishes up his awesome first half. If Shota can, he's only a few starts since coming off the IL. Can he kind of get things or end the first half on a good note? And then if that offense can do a good job against some tough pitching over there in New York. So that remains to be seen, but we're almost here to the end of the first half. And again, as I said for a while in the first 10 minutes, the Cubs are in a great position. The Brewers are knocking on the door. The Brewers are hot on their tail. But regardless, the Cubs have put themselves in a great position to go on a run here to the postseason in the second half. They got to keep it up there, but they put themselves in a great position to go on that run, and that's kind of what we needed to see from the Cubs this season. 4 years after the teardown, you win into this season needing to see them put themselves in the kind of position that they put themselves in, and so that's a credit to them for going out and doing that. But that'll do it for this Cubs episode on the Addison to 35th podcast. You can hear my guy Herb Lawrence doing Sox shows on here. So if you're interested with anything White Sox, check out Herb Lawrence doing his Sox episodes of the Addison the 35th podcast. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, give it a like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell everyone. We appreciate all the support we get, but we definitely appreciate even more. But that'll do it again for the Addison the 35th podcast. I am Ryan Herrera. And until we talk again, have a good one.